The shocking truth about the Holy Spirit revealed, uncovering the mysteries of the Trinity. Few knew what truly happened that night in Jerusalem. The air was thick with tension, crackling like a storm about to break. Disciples huddled, fear and hope mixing in their hearts. They whispered secrets, unsure of the fate that awaited them. Some said it was just another ordinary evening, others felt an unseen force pushing against their souls. The room was dimly lit, flickering shadows danced across the walls. They were gathered in a cramped space, waiting. Waiting for what they didn't know. Suddenly, a sound like the rush of a mighty wind filled the air. It was overwhelming. They looked at each other, wide-eyed. What could this be? Was it a warning? A promise? Or something beyond their understanding? Then it happened. Something fiery, like tongues of flame, descended upon them. Each person felt a warmth enveloping them, igniting an ember deep in their being. They spoke in languages they had never learned. Confusion and excitement intertwined. How could this be? They spoke of wonders, of dreams, of visions. People gathered outside, drawn in by the sounds. These were the same men who once cowered in fear, hiding from the world. Now they stood bold, proclaiming truths like thunder. The crowd was amazed, bewildered. Aren't these men Galileans? They murmured. How can they speak in our native tongues? How can they tell us our stories? The streets echoed with questions. Some sneered, dismissing it as drunkenness. Others felt a stirring in their hearts, igniting curiosity. This was a moment pregnant with mystery. What was this power? Where did it come from? The Holy Spirit, was it a gift or a challenge? The atmosphere teetered between disbelief and awe. It was a tangible force, wrapping around every heart, every mind. It challenged the very essence of their faith. Could this be the fulfillment of ancient prophecies? Or merely a fleeting, confusing spectacle? The disciples felt the weight of this divine encounter deep in their bones. As they clung to their newfound voices, an unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Would they be able to keep this fire alive? What awaited them beyond that night? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The morning sun spilled over Jerusalem, a golden hue stretching against the gray of the night that held so much uncertainty. As the disciples emerged from that cramped room, exhilaration flickered like the flames that had danced above their heads, yet beneath it lay an undercurrent of profound confusion. The world outside was expansive and filled with people who needed to understand what had just transpired within those walls, but what words could capture the enormity of such revelation? Peter stepped forward, emboldened in ways he hadn't thought possible. He raised his voice above the din of the gathered throng. Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words. His heart raced. This was no longer the anxious fisherman of Galilee, but a herald of something far greater. As he spoke, the crowd quieted, drawn in, their expressions a mix of skepticism and yearning. The wonder of their native tongues being spoken filled them with intrigue, a miracle unfurling in their midst. Yet, do mirages not often dazzle before vanishing? Would their faith stand firm against the winds of doubt? He shared stories of prophecies long cherished, words of the great prophets echoing through the ages. His voice resonated with the cadence of ancient verses that foretold of a spirit poured out on all flesh. This is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel, he proclaimed with fervor, his words curling around the gathered like the embrace of the stars gathering in twilight. Yet, amidst the clamor of awakening faith, skeptics remained. A group stood at the edge, arms crossed, brow furrowed, whispering among themselves. They are just filled with new wine, one concluded flatly, dismissing the miraculous. Peter felt a pang in his heart. They were caught in a veil of misunderstanding, blind to the beauty unfolding before them. The fire that ignited their spirits challenged the very foundation of their beliefs. Did they truly want to become new creations? The thought, exhilarating yet daunting, hovered in the air like a newly kindled flame, casting long shadows of possibility. As the masses began to respond, some fell to their knees in repentance, while others found themselves hardened. The division of revelation and rejection formed like veins in the earth, deep and irreversible. How could such a gift breed both unity and discord? Peter's soul grappled with this tension, his spirit whispering secrets even he could not decipher. The day swept on, with each moment leading to another, each voice echoing a longing for clarity. Miracles continued as the disciples healed the sick and spoke hope into the weary hearts of the broken. Yet with every blessing came questions that seemed to ripple out infinitely, shattering any simple understanding of their new reality. In the midst of this, as the light faded into evening, they gathered again in the familiar space. Curiosity and fear intermingled as they recounted their experiences, yet uncertainties remained clenched within them. What comes next? James asked, frowning as he traced a finger over the grain of the table, lost in thought. As they pondered the weight of their charge, shadows flickered in their hearts, a palpable sense of something grand yet fearful loomed. Would this fire sustain them amidst trials to come? Would they endure when the winds of opposition howled? As questions hung like the stars just past twilight, one more burned in the quiet corners of their spirits. What does it truly mean to be filled with the Holy Spirit? And how would they guide others into this unprecedented mystery? The sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping the sky in a cloak of indigo as the disciples gathered once again, their faces illuminated by the flickering oil lamps that cast both light and shadows upon the walls. There was a palpable heaviness in the air, a weight laden with the anticipation of the unknown. Peter stood before them, an inexorable longing to understand coursing through his veins. "Brothers," he began, his voice steady but laced with a tremor of urgency. "What we experienced today was more than mere tongues and prophecies. We have been declared witnesses of a new covenant, a covenant that transcends our old ways." The murmurs began again. Each voice carried the tone of doubt, confusion, and hunger for understanding. John looked curiously at Peter. "But how do we fulfill this calling? What are we to do now, with the world watching us through the veil of skepticism?" Peter clasped his hands together, feeling the weight of each question, but one rose to the surface, breaking the stillness, igniting introspection among them. What if we are merely vessels, and this spirit within us requires a journey of surrender rather than mere understanding? The suggestion struck a chord, a ripple of recognition flickering among the gathered. Thomas, ever the practical one, furrowed his brow. A journey of surrender? But how do we surrender to something we cannot fully comprehend? This spirit, it is like the wind, we hear its sound, but we do not see it. How can we trust it? In that moment, a gentle breeze wafted through the open window, swirling the flame of their lamps, a whisper from the unseen. It seemed to beckon them. They felt it inhale and exhale in symphony with their heartbeat. Suddenly, they were acutely aware of the presence of something larger than themselves, stitching the fabric of their spirits together. Matthew, always contemplative, spoke up. Could it be that this calling is not merely about understanding but rather about transformation? Perhaps the Spirit does not come to clarify our doubts but to prepare us for the unknown roads ahead. Their gazes settled on him as if words had coalesced into tangible form. Peter's heart resonated with the raw truth of Matthew's insight. Yes, transformation. Perhaps this is how he works within us, by stretching our minds beyond the known and leading us to trust the unseen. But as hope blossomed, fear crept in once more. "What price must we pay for this transformation?" asked one of the quieter voices, Bartholomew, who had watched the world unfold with solemn wisdom. "If we embrace this, will we not encounter trials we can scarcely bear?" As if echoing Bartholomew's sentiment, a silence fell among them, bobbing to the surface of their reflections. They had witnessed wonders, yet they had also tasted the bitter edges of fear, fear of being misunderstood, fear of persecution, fear of losing their very lives for the truth that ignited them. With every question shared, their hearts intertwined in vulnerability, were they willing to embrace the mystery set before them, knowing the path could lead them through great suffering? Would they rise to be the torchbearers of a flame meant to burn brightly against the night, illuminating both the lost and the found? As the night stretched on, filled with the ebb and flow of candid thoughts, a final resonance filled the room. What if the mystery of the Spirit was not just for understanding but for embracing the unseen path ahead, one fraught with both peril and promise? How might they cultivate a faith that thrives not on certainties but on the very essence of trust? The night wore on, and shadows danced upon the walls of the gathering place, the flickering lamps mimicking the uncertainty coursing through the hearts of the disciples. Each man wrestled with the weight of the moment, reflecting on the profound implications of the Spirit that stirred so fiercely among them. The air buzzed with a mix of fear and curiosity, forging a deeper bond than any of them had ever felt. As they spoke of surrender and transformation, a sudden shudder rippled through the room, stilling the currents of doubt. It was a reminder of the ground beneath them, the earth that bore witness to their struggle and the sky that held the stars of divine promise. They would need to navigate more than their inner conflicts. They were summoned to confront the outside world, the fraying threads of reality as they had known it. James, the son of Zebedee, discerned the collective yearning and spoke from the depths of his soul. "I cannot help but think that this is less about what we lose and more about what we might gain. We are being drawn into a mystery that beckons us to discover not only our own destinies but the very purpose of creation." At these words, the atmosphere shifted, carrying with it an air of hope interwoven with fear. The other disciples leaned in closer, captivated by the notion that darkness could serve as a pathway to illumination. Perhaps every shadow they faced was but a glimpse of the light, however distant, waiting just beyond their reach. "Could it be," said Andrew, his voice imbued with newfound clarity, "that our discomfort may be a catalyst for revelation? If the Spirit resides in us, might our struggles reveal aspects of this divine presence that we have yet to behold?" The conversation spiraled inward like a whirlpool, each question surfacing deeper layers of spiritual insight. They found themselves contemplating how faith was woven through their very existence, a tapestry of experiences that intertwined joy and despair, clarity and confusion. This tapestry mirrored the essence of the Spirit they sensed so acutely. Philip raised a gentle, contemplative question, his brows furrowed in thought. "But how do we ensure that our transformations do not render us into mere ebb and flow of opinions cast like the tide? To be aware of the Spirit is one great thing, but to act upon that awareness is entirely different. How can we be assured that we will not falter in our faith?" Peter felt the weight of this uncertainty anew, as it coalesced among them. The truth was indeed daunting. They were immature in their understanding of the mantle they were being called to carry. Yet, within that hesitation was a stirring, a resilience warming the embers of their hearts. "Perhaps it is in the very act of stepping into our fears that we will each illuminate the strength of the Spirit within us," he responded, emboldened by solidarity. "If we surrender our need for certainty, we might find that faith becomes an exploration, a journey woven through trials that, if we are attentive, lead us closer to the truth of His presence." As their reflections deepened, each man could sense an invisible thread tethering them to something far greater than themselves. Each word dropped like seeds into fertile soil, awaiting the nurturing of faith to sprout and bloom. Nevertheless, amidst the gathering hope lingered the uncertainty. What would the trials look like? Would they be prepared for the cost of their unwavering belief? The questions hung thick in the air like dew upon a morning leaf, reflecting glimmers of light and yet obscured in the fog of the unknown. And so, the disciples knew they stood on the precipice of a journey toward something both terrifying and magnificent, their souls woven into the fabric of divine will. The question rattled within them, a haunting chorus weaving through the fabric of their faith: how far are they willing to go into the unknown, trusting that within the shadows lies the truest essence of the Spirit waiting to transform them? As the night deepened, the whispers of the disciples became mere hums, captivated by an unseen thread pulling them towards a truth they felt on the cusp of realization. Just as their discussion intertwined with reverence, a sudden stillness overtook the room, the flickering lamps dimmed, and a palpable presence enveloped them, punctuating their gathering with an almost electric anticipation. It was then that Bartholomew leaned forward, his brow furrowing with intent. What if the Spirit does not merely act within us, but seeks to move through us into the world beyond? Could our struggles serve a greater purpose, not just as individuals but as a collective, a body meant to enact change. His words cast a spark into the somber atmosphere, illuminating a path steeped in mystery. They mused on this notion: what do the shadows of the outside world hold for them, and how might they reflect the divine purpose unfolding through their own lives? Philip spoke again, urgency creeping into his voice as he asked, could this shift within lead to an awakening beyond our circle? Would we be emboldened to step into the market squares and street corners, proclaiming what we have yet to fully understand ourselves? A wave of apprehension washed over them. Each man instinctively recognized the enormity of what was being suggested, the potential to become vessels of a truth they scarcely comprehended. Yet within that fear ignited a flicker of excitement. Peter, with an uncharacteristic resolve, took a stand. If this is the path laid before us, are we not carried by the very Spirit we seek? Thus, even in our shortcomings, there lies an authenticity. Surely the divine can work through the imperfect. Andrew, casting his gaze towards the dimly lit windows, pondered aloud, but what of rejection? What if the world closes its doors to our message? Are we prepared to confront hostility or dissent? Are we not taught to practice peace and humility, yet thrusting ourselves into the limelight feels like a deliberate act of hubris? With these words, the disciples exchanged glances, an unspoken acknowledgement passing among them. The challenges ahead loomed larger with each breath, but perhaps these trials were not mere obstacles, they could also be invitations to uncover facets of faith they had yet to explore. The tension thickened again, laden with the weight of unformed possibilities. Then, Thomas, often the one to temper wild dreams with skeptical clarity, cleared his throat. If we are to be the torchbearers of this message, we must ask ourselves with every step we take towards revelation, how do we guard against the misrepresentation of the truth? How do we remain tethered amidst the swirling currents of interpretation and belief? If the Spirit is to flow through us, how do we ensure that our vessels are pure and true? Silence enveloped them once more, heavy with the weight of discernment. Questions lingered in the air, echoing from heart to heart as stars blinked through the fractured windows. They too seemed to wonder at the profound task unfolding before the men crouched in contemplation. Was transformation not simply an internal affair but a manifestation of faith through action? Yet as dawn approached, a nagging question began to crystallize in the depths of their minds: if they were to become instruments of the Spirit, how would they discern its presence in the tumultuous waves of human experience? What if the truth unveiled upon their journey bore not only light but shadow? Thus, they remained there, suspended within the mystery that both beckoned and intimidated, united by a thread of longing yet teetering at the edge of an unknown future. Their hearts beat to a restless rhythm, against which a solitary question began to form in their minds: how might the unveiling of truth through the Spirit demand not only courage but a willingness to embrace uncertainty and ambiguity in their faith journey? The first light of dawn gently kissed the edges of the horizon, spilling warmth into the room that had held so much weight the night before. As the disciples stirred, the atmosphere hung heavy with unanswered questions, and a resolve began to blossom within their hearts, albeit cautiously. Though they had shared in deep reflections, now each was tasked with working through the implications of their shared revelations in the solitude of their own thoughts. As they rose to prepare for the day, a sense of urgency pulsed through Peter's veins. He gathered the others, breaking the stillness with a solemn invitation. Let us come together once more before the sun has fully risen. We stand at the brink of something significant. Can we not take a moment to seek clarity? To pray for guidance? The men gathered in a circle, the breath of morning filling their lungs as they closed their eyes, surrendering their fears and ambitions to the divine. It was in this sacred pause that the Spirit began to weave a tapestry of connection among them. Each heartbeat felt entwined with the whispers of others as they sought the strength not to lean solely on their understandings, but to invite deeper wisdom. At the center, Bartholomew stood still, his spirit resonating with unvoiced thoughts. What if our coming together is not an end in itself but a means to touch a greater purpose? A chain linked to something beyond comprehension. Could we trust that the Spirit guides our collective voice, shaping our message into something potent and transformative? The others nodded, the glow of instinct igniting once more. Philip, emboldened by their gathering, responded, "Indeed, what if every moment we fear is but an opportunity for the Spirit to fill us with courage? We need not know every answer, only that we act with love and humility. With each word, a current of courage coursed through them. And yet still, a simmering apprehension lingered. Andrew shifted, gesturing towards the earlier doubts. But how do we address the fears of those who might receive our message? Can we bear rejection without losing heart? Should we suppose that our call to witness might not turn out as we envisioned? Their minds churned with the weight of this reality. Glancing towards the window, Thomas offered, "We must remember that the truth we possess may not match the world's expectations. To act in the Spirit means risking misunderstanding. What happens when our testimony provokes confusion rather than clarity? And how do we reconcile the varied interpretations that may arise?" An unexpected silence, heavy and thoughtful, enveloped them again. Within the stillness, an idea crystallized. What if confusion is itself a sign that the Spirit is at work? An invitation for deeper dialogue? Would their journey not mirror the ancient texts they revered, full of strife yet saturated with moments of unparalleled revelation? As they dared to contemplate this newfound perspective, anxiety softened into intrigue. How often had they witnessed others' stories convoluted into their own forms of narrative? Such lived experiences didn't negate the truth, they enriched it. Each life, a lens through which the same Spirit revealed fragmented aspirations. With this realization, they shared cautious smiles, letting their curiosity guide their thoughts. "We must seek to be agents of understanding rather than fear," John whispered, his gaze brightening. "The truth contains many colors. Perhaps the Spirit flows through these differences to create a tapestry of experience that draws us into deeper relationship." As dawn emerged fully, the tenacity of enlightenment unfurled in their hearts. Yet the question continued to dwell in the recesses of their minds: was it possible that their purpose was to embrace the ambiguity of truth, allowing it to evolve within themselves as they ventured outward into the world? And if they were to welcome controversy as a part of their mission, how could they ensure they remained unified in spirit amidst the swelling tides of perspective? As the morning light embraced them, wiping away the remnants of the night's silence, the disciples exchanged glances, their hearts troubling yet eager. The rugged walls of the room began to feel less like confines and more like a sanctuary, an incubator for the potential that lay before them. Peter, his brow knitted in concentration, posed a question that echoed their earlier musings. "If we are to embrace the unknown, if our call extends beyond our comfort, what will be the first step we take towards the world outside?" The air stirred, thick with anticipation, and Bartholomew spoke up again, this time with resolute passion. "Let us not wait for the perfect moment, let us create it. If we have witnessed the miraculous in our midst, why should we hide it away? We each carry a fragment of truth that the world needs to hear." Their breaths synchronized, and slowly they began to understand. To share their experiences was not to impose a singular truth but to invite others into a shared discovery. Nathanael added quietly, "And are not the Spirit's gifts given freely for the benefit of all? Perhaps our journey is to step forward, however imperfectly, in faith that the Spirit will guide each interaction." Encouraged by this perspective, Thomas considered, what if we spoke not solely to instruct but to listen as well? In every conversation, may we find seed of truth in those who may not share our beliefs. A dialogue, not a monologue, that honors the spirit of the exchange. As their hearts stirred with possibilities, a knock echoed through the door, breaking the sacred resonance. Their thoughts scattered momentarily, and Andrew opened it cautiously. As the door creaked, they saw a passerby, a woman with eyes reflecting both weariness and curiosity. Her presence felt like an unexpected gift, leading them to new roads full of potential questions. "Excuse me," she spoke hesitantly, "I overheard you speaking. Are you the ones who proclaim hope in troubled times?" Her question rolled into their hearts like sacred water, stirring the ground beneath them. Matthew stepped forward, his voice steady but thoughtful. "We seek to understand that hope is not merely a fleeting illusion, it is found within a truth larger than ourselves. But we have our struggles, too." Their conversation unfolded around the table, an impromptu gathering of different souls. They found themselves discussing shared doubts, dreams, and stories, reflecting on the myriad shades of hope that colored their experiences. In this unexpected engagement, they felt the presence of the Spirit among them, connecting hearts and weaving narratives. Answers began to emerge not in doctrines but in lived experiences rooted in compassion, listening, and understanding. The woman smiled slowly, her shoulders relaxing as she said, "Perhaps we find sacredness in our uncertainties, recognizing that our paths need not be perfectly aligned for us to find grace in the journey together." Each disciple nodded, treasuring her insight. Yet, as they engaged further, the deeper truths they uncovered brought new questions to the surface. How do we bridge divides that seem insurmountable? In our effort to connect, will we always find understanding? Despite the warmth embracing their gathering, a flicker of fear lingered at the edges of their minds. Though they embraced this moment, an understanding loomed that the sacred act of connection could lead to misunderstandings or even conflict. As the sun began to climb higher in the sky, illuminating the sacred space they shared, the group grappled with these realities. What if their pursuit of truth could incite division as much as unity? If differences could spark debates instead of dialogues, what then? And in sharing their version of truth rooted in love, would they remain humble enough to hear the truths of others? These lingering questions swept through them like an undercurrent, leaving yet another thread of reflection. Is the courage to truly listen a vital component of embodying the very spirit we seek to proclaim, or could the struggle with misunderstanding itself lead them even closer to the essence of this divine relationship? As the warmth of the day deepened, the gathering at the table took on an atmosphere marked by both reverence and vulnerability. The woman's presence acted as a catalyst, drawing forth confessions that had remained unspoken among the disciples. They rotated their thoughts and feelings like delicate stones, each turn revealing a new facet of their spiritual journey. Peter, emboldened, began to share a memory that echoed in his heart, a moment before the tumult of the crucifixion. "I remember a time when I felt lost," he began, his voice steady but laced with a pang of remembrance. "I had been fishing all night without a single catch, when a figure appeared on the shore. It was just before dawn, and he said to cast my nets one more time. I hesitated, but obeyed. The nets burst with fish. In my moment of doubt, he taught me that abundance often lies behind the simplest act of trust." Bartholomew nodded thoughtfully. "And is it not in our shared trust that we might find our purpose? To listen, to engage, to bear witness to one another. Perhaps this is our first act of faith in stepping beyond our fears." The woman, whose name was Miriam, leaned in closer, her expression shifting from anxious to intrigued. "But how sacred is that trust if we are carrying unresolved fear or doubt?" she asked, her voice quivering slightly. "Can we genuinely invite others into a space that feels fragmented within ourselves?" Andrew glanced at the others, sensing the weight of her words. "Yes, Miriam, I believe we must face our own uncertainties," he replied softly. "The truth we share doesn't demand perfection, rather, it invites authenticity. We speak not from a position of absolute truth, but from our genuine experiences interwoven with longing." At that moment, a profound silence enveloped the group. Each disciple was absorbed in introspection, contemplating the delicate balance between vulnerability and authenticity, the rawness of their testimonies, and the possibility that their own understandings might evolve through the very connections they sought to cultivate. Yet, a question nagged at them: could they share their stories without inadvertently casting shadows of doubt on others' paths? As they sat together, Nathanael's eyes widened in realization. What if our sacred task is not only to speak but also to bear witness to the Spirit's diverse expressions? He mused. What if we are to learn from those seemingly far removed from our own experiences? In that learning, we encounter a wider tapestry of divine revelation. Miriam's face brightened with excitement. "So, it's like walking on a journey together, not as guides, but as fellow travelers. Each of us adds to the richness of the experience." The warmth and light of the discussion radiated around the table, the air charged with a sense of potential, yet amid the hope, a quiet shadow lingered just at the edge of their thoughts. What if the revelations they cherished would be met with skepticism or refusal? The fear of rejection or misunderstanding lay like a thrum beneath their exchanging stories. Matthew finally broke the silence. "In our eagerness to share what we've come to know, are we prepared for those who might question our truths? Will we remain steadfast in our communal exploration or retreat into silence when faced with confrontation?" As the sun traveled across the sky, casting long shadows through the room, they faced the unmistakable realization that every encounter with another would invite the risk of misunderstanding, of disrupting the peace they sought to establish. Lingering over the gathered voices, the room hummed not only with revelation but also with quiet trepidation, hinting at a deeper conflict brewing beneath the surface. All seated, the disciples bowed their heads in silent prayer, yearning for guidance, and as they contemplated the mysteries of connection and the Spirit's diverse manifestations, they could not help but wonder, is the pursuit of understanding in our differences a divine calling, or does that very pursuit invite additional trials into our hearts? Can we embrace the journey while fully acknowledging the depths of our uncertainties? As the afternoon light softened into hues of gold and amber, the atmosphere around the table remained charged with an increased sense of urgency and curiosity. The disciples' heads remained bowed as the weight of their reflections settled deeper within them. In the stillness, a gentle breeze wafted through an open window, carrying with it the distant sounds of laughter from children playing outside. Lives unaware of the profound conversations taking place within. Peter, with his brow furrowed in contemplation, lifted his head and spoke again, his voice now laced with an authority that came from both introspection and the spirit of leadership he had often sought to embody. My friends, as we ponder the isolation that fear brings, I cannot help but wonder, what would our mission look like if we embraced the reality of our differences instead of circling around them? What if, in our struggles, we discovered the very essence of our unity? Bartholomew's eyes widened, drawn to Peter's insight. Indeed, Peter. It could be a pathway to something deeper. What if each of our narratives, no matter how fragmented, contributes toward a collective understanding of faith? Perhaps the essence of the Holy Spirit lies in that very connection, the push and pull of our distinct experiences guiding us back to the heart of one truth. Miriam nodded vigorously, suddenly inspired. If we were to honor each encounter as sacred ground, would that not then transform our connections into opportunities for understanding, rather than chances for miscommunication? If we are to acknowledge our stories, we must also recognize how the Spirit manifests uniquely within us. Matthew, sensing the brilliance of their unfolding dialogue, interjected, but how do we invite others into this space? The fear of judgment is palpable, we have all walked that path. The Scriptures speak of the Spirit as a comforter, yet how can we fulfill this role if we ourselves wrestle with doubt? Are we equipped to embody that which we seek? There was a moment of hush as their musings hung delicately in the air, each disciple reflecting on his own doubts and struggles, the silence wrapping around them like a thick blanket of shared uncertainty. Then, Andrew raised his voice in realization, we must remember that every encounter we have, whether filled with agreement or dissent, has the potential to draw us closer to the divine mystery. Consider the beauty in conflict. The challenge presented by those who question us may serve to refine our beliefs, to encourage us to seek deeper, to stretch beyond ourselves. How then can we view skepticism not as a barrier, but as an invitation to a more profound understanding? As the sun lowered and shadows danced upon the walls, Nathanael added, but in extending this invitation, will we find the strength to embrace the discomfort that naturally arises? The path toward understanding is rarely linear, often filled with obstacles that test our resolve. Will we cling to the comfort of our familiar circles, or will we stretch our hands in faith toward those who might challenge our truths? They were confronted with the possibility that what could be viewed as obstacles might actually serve as instruments of grace. But would they have the courage to traverse this winding road together, hearts laid bare, confronting not just their own fears but the collective doubts that accompanied them? Miriam's gaze shifted toward the window, the sound of laughter momentarily pulling at her heart. What if there are those suffering beyond the walls of this room, longing for the truth we explore? Are we willing to step outside our fears to share what we have seen and felt, to risk vulnerability in a world that often shuns it? Silence settled once more, but it was a silence laden with the weight of unspoken fears and uncharted possibilities. As they sat together, encompassed by the flickering light and the fading day, a new understanding began to dawn, a realization that the journey toward faith was about more than just individual truths. It was about weaving together disparate threads into a tapestry of communal understanding, each story a vibrant color adding depth to the whole. Yet an unresolved question lingered, swirling in the growing dusk. In our search for unity amidst diversity, can we honor the intricacies of each personal journey without compromising the very truths that bind us together in the Spirit? As the darkness settled over Jerusalem, casting elongated shadows that flickered across the stone streets, the disciples found themselves enveloped by a profound stillness. They bore the weight of both promise and trepidation, a fusion of hope and uncertainty marked by the illuminating experiences of the past few days. The air crackled with the echoes of their discussions, resonating with questions that hung in the moonlit sky. On that night, as they gathered in their familiar space once more, Peter sensed a pull, a divine invitation drawing them into a deeper understanding. With a calm authority, he stood at their center, feelings of both leadership and vulnerability coursing through him. Brothers and sisters, we have ventured into the mysteries of the Spirit these past days, unraveling threads of hope, fear, and transformation. But perhaps it is time we clarify our purpose. What does it truly mean to embody the Spirit's presence among us? His question fell heavy as the stars twinkled above them, illuminated by their shared longing for clarity. The murmurings that followed were rich with abounding questions and the stirring of collective awareness. Could they truly grasp the significance of this sacred calling and embrace the unknown paths ahead? John, always reflective, leaned in. What if it is not about solely grasping the power bestowed upon us, but rather, about surrendering to it? Might our fears be the very vessels that transport divine truth into the world? A gentle silence spread among them, each face reflecting flickers of understanding as the significance of those words began to settle in. Was it possible that surrendering their need for control could unlock a transformative power that transcended their understanding? Perhaps their role was not to play the part of masters but to become conduits of something far grander. Suddenly, Bartholomew, who often carried wisdom quietly, spoke with quiet fervor. If we are to embrace this transformation, are we not each called to reflect love and understanding? Our efforts must extend beyond these walls, encapsulating the very essence of what we have received. This Spirit, have we not tasted the conviction that we are meant to weave a tapestry of faith, varying yet unified, into the hearts of others? A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, and the sense of urgency began to build, a realization that their journey was about to lead them into the unknown. But there loomed a question, one that would test their faith. Could they withstand the trials that awaited, knowing rejection or misunderstanding might follow? Thomas, with his usually tempered skepticism, added, "Struggles lie not just beyond our understanding but within it. Our faith may compel us to act boldly, yet doubts will always whisper. Can these two coexist in harmony, allowing us to serve as bearers of the Spirit?" And as doubt twisted among them, a breeze, cool and refreshing, swept through the open window, a divine reminder of the living presence that enveloped their gathering. It carried with it the laughter of children from the streets below and the pulse of a city aching for hope. These sounds stirred in Peter a conviction: what if our stories become the bridge? In every act of vulnerability, we open doors for others to walk alongside us. We do not share from a state of perfect assurance, but rather from the messy truth of our own struggles, desires, and joys. With each heartbeat reverberating through the walls, Peter's words became an anchor, settling them within a purpose far greater than the confines of their fears. They were called to testify not only of revelation but of revelation in a process that might birth tension yet ultimately lead to understanding. At that moment, an unexpected knock resounded through the door they had nearly forgotten, a gentle yet insistent sound. As Peter opened it, a single figure stood framed against the twilight, a weary traveler, intent and searching. Her eyes, wide and vulnerable, searched their faces for solace, a connection, a spark of understanding. "I have heard tales of a gathering. You are the ones who speak of love that transcends barriers," she implored, her heart laid bare in her tone. Their eyes met, linking them all in a moment suspended between fear and possibility. It was then the disciples understood, this was the threshold of their calling. They were no longer just a small group of men transformed by a moment of divine fire, they were now a crucible of hope waiting to ignite. Peter, stepping forward with renewed fervor, gestured her inside. "You seek hope, and we have glimpsed it. But know that we walk this journey together. Your questions are as sacred as our answers, and in sharing them, we find greater understanding." As the traveler stepped within, the atmosphere shifted. What was once a gathering of apprehension transformed into a sanctuary of connection. Together, they began sharing their stories, their vulnerabilities merging and intersecting, a collective rhythm unveiling truths only the Spirit could weave. In that sacred exchange, revelation dawned. Their differences, once sources of fear, yawned open as paths to understanding. With every shared struggle, they encountered Christ's Spirit anew, recognizing in one another the heartbeat of creation, the joy and sorrow of being human, the depths of doubt entwined with the heights of faith. The gathering spread far beyond their walls and ultimately reached the streets of Jerusalem. As they began speaking to the crowds, echoing their shared experiences, the Spirit moved mightily. Lives were changed, people found solace where once there had been despair. What emerged from the collective faith of these disciples was not only transformation within their own hearts but a movement that transcended time and space, drawing others into the tender embrace of truth woven through authenticity and love. And in that revelation lay the powerful truth, that the Spirit unites us through our stories, as we reflect the beauty of our diverse experiences while growing together into a tapestry of faith, filled with transformative power. As the night continued and the sounds of life filled the air, the disciples understood the true nature of their calling to bear witness, to surrender, and to embrace the vibrant uncertainties that allow the Spirit to flow unimpeded. And so the echoes of that night would resonate beyond Jerusalem, a whisper of hope that would remind generations to come. The path of faith is not one of certainty but a profound journey through truth, vulnerability, and profound love. Each step forward, a testament of faith's song unbroken, resonating throughout history, beckoning all to join in the wondrous dance led by the Spirit that calls each heart home.